Welcome to Season 2 of Queerantine. This podcast, we talk about all things queer and all things quarantine, and this season we're focusing on the reopening and how that's going for everybody. This week, I'm lucky to be joined for a second time by Imogene Life.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. So I'm doing a new thing this season where I get my guests to tell me their pronouns before we start. So go ahead.
Okay. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I also accept they, them.
Cool. I guess you know the drill. We talk half about queer things and half about quarantine things, except this time we're talking about the reopening.
I have feelings, strong ones. I live in Alberta.
True.
We'll get to that.
You can't live in Alberta and not have strong feelings about things that happen there. Well, you can.
I guess for me personally, the most exciting thing that's happened since we chatted is I got my new pansexual pride flag. So yeah, now I have that in the queer flag hanging over my bed. And one of my colleagues in my cohort is brilliant. She makes like needlepoint. So she made me a little needlepoint with the pride flag, with like the black and brown stripes at the top. And then a little pan flag as well. So now I have my queerness in multiple rooms in my home now. So that's been nice. It's like affirming, I think, when you can kind of collect these little things that every day you get to look at, and they're like a reminder of, I guess, becoming who you are or really stepping in and owning that piece of yourself. So, I mean, that's the most exciting thing I would say that's been going on. Oh, I guess since we talked, City of Calgary was debating on the banning of
Conversion therapy.
It passed in favor of the ban, and the sneaky little people who were trying to get their loopholey bullshit in didn't get their loopholey bullshit in. So I would consider that a positive.
That's a win.
And I guess in Calgary right now we're gearing up for a very different looking Pride.
Right, because it's not in June in Calgary.
No, it's the end of August, beginning of September. We've had some events already, virtual ones. It's really what I think is really cool about this year. You know, as much as I'd love to be out at the parade and all of that, I love all that spectacle, the visual of it. It's been a lot about learning and teaching. And I really do think that in a crisis, globally, the best thing that we can do, hopefully, is come out of our homes better educated and more compassionate.
I love how you put that.
Yeah. So I'm excited to see some of those or attend some of those virtual events. They're talking a lot about, there's some events too about Two-Spirit and Indigenous gender identities. We're talking about what is it? Alberta has the highest STD rate for a very specific STD that is escaping my brain.
Syphilis?
Syphilis, yes.
Yeah. Oh, it's sad that I still know that.
Alberta's still winning that game. So there's conversations about that, conversations about sexuality. Like, I think it's a different kind of pride, but it might be, I think there's always opportunity and change and difference. So I'm excited to virtually attend. And I have my flags in my home. So, every day I wake up and I can still be like, I am gay, even though I'm not seeing anyone. My community is fragmented, but it's fine.
Yeah, I do the same thing. Every morning I wake up and I'm like, yep, gay.
Still gay, okay. Yeah, so I guess those are kind of the queer things that have been happening. Yeah, like it's just been strange, I guess.
Hmm.
Because I remember when we first talked and everything was in lockdown, I think I still had like hope that by this point we would be
Okay.
okay.
Yeah. That it would be over by now.
Maybe not even over, just more open, I guess.
Mm.
And it's not.
Well, we're more open.
Yes, but we can talk about the complexities of that.
True. I like that Calgary Pride is doing like more of like an education based thing this year, especially for Calgary. I think that's great. Not to say that like other places shouldn't also have the education aspect of it, because like I love Pride. I've only been to Pride once, but I love Pride. However, Pride is still very much exclusionary
Mm.
to far too many people in the queer community. A female presenting person and a male presenting person are in a relationship and go to Pride together, then all the gays get up in arms being like, we don't want the straights here. Well, guess what? Neither of us are straight, so fuck you.
Yeah, I distinctly remember one year, a couple years ago now, when I went with my ex, who is masculine presenting, but is not a masculine person internally, who had the trans flag on, who was wearing makeup, and they just were like, give you that look, hairy eyeball kind of.
Yeah.
And you're like, how can you tell anything about me? And part of me wants to be rebellious and be like, these could just be really expensive fake boobs. You know what I mean? Like, you don't know. This could be a really good chest plate. How do you know? You don't know. Don't bring that here. This is our space for all of us to feel celebrated and honored and loved and
prideful.
Yeah. And just because you are, or for myself personally, just because I am a cisgendered woman who tends to be in relationships with masculine presenting people, or men, or cis men, doesn't mean I'm not queer. Doesn't mean that that part of me goes away. I just have particular likes.
Yeah. Just like everybody does.
Exactly.
Like, there's plenty of gay men out there that are like, I don't like twinks. Does that make you less gay because you like bears? No.
So yeah, I just pulled it up on Facebook, some of the events, because I was like, oh, I'll read some. So there's LGBTQ 101,
Ooh.
Indigenize Pride, an online beating session, Real Talk, talking about domestic violence, which is fantastic because I feel like that's so under talked about in the queer community, period. And I think people have this misunderstanding that domestic violence can only be occurring in like cisgendered relationships. People period have a propensity to be violent. So I'm that one I'm like, yes. Rainbow Connection, history of LGBTQ newcomers in Canada. Let's talk about people who immigrate here. Talking about intersex individuals.
Wow.
Disrupting androgyny, voices of Black non-binary femmes. Shifting perspectives, which is talking about sex work. Two-spirit identities, Pride origins, and there's a weekly Pride cast that is always happening. Black queer leadership and the defund the police movement. Pride history walk and brunch. Indigiqueer gala, which I just, everything about that title is like, yes.
Wow.
In some ways, I feel like this has made this more accessible.
True. Very true. But hopefully, they'll keep the links and like the recordings and stuff, they'll keep up and live so that even after Pride, people can go back and relearn.
I assume so.
Whether you're in Calgary or not, a lot of those things would be really, really great to learn about.
It's going to be like a interesting, different, like I said, let's be knowledgeable and compassionate when we leave our homes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I love that. That's so great, especially with the attacks that have been happening in Calgary of late. I guess for anybody that doesn't know or hasn't heard, a bunch of queer folk have been attacked. Last I heard there had been 4 attacks total.
Yeah, people getting spit on, people getting things thrown at them, just general discrimination.
Yeah.
And the spitting in particular really, really I find bothersome. I mean, I would find it bothersome outside of COVID, because that's the most disgusting thing I think you can do to someone. But especially during COVID, like your phlegm is now actually like a bioweapon, and like I don't know, I think it adds an extra layer of violence to be so wrapped up in your own dumbassery as to think that it's okay to enact that. Like I've been searching for an understanding as to why, and I think at this point in my life, I'm over the excuses of ignorance. So if you're spitting at people, you're just an asshole.
Yep. Well, so one of the spitting incidents that I heard about was on Stephen Ave, and a group of, I assume, cis men, based on the story, were walking down Stephen Avenue and saw a drag king shooting a video for Calgary Pride, and spit on him. And as they were passing, said something about, yeah, I spit on homos or something along those lines. So like it was a very direct attack.
I think what's interesting too, though, and maybe this is like the social worker in me, because as a social worker, I always do try to find a thread of understanding in behavior. It's never an excuse. It's just to understand. I think people are so fearful right now, even if they don't want to admit it. And I think, especially if we're going to talk about men, their fear often comes out as aggression. And we could postulate 100 different reasons why. I don't think it matters why. I just think that that's, gender socialization, environment, crux, intersection, web, whatever. And so I think that the reason why we're seeing much more violence directed towards all people, but the queer community in general, is because people need to externalize the fear that they're having about the pandemic, and so they're doing it towards a group that they are fearful of because they don't understand. I don't know.
Or internalized homophobia.
Yep, internalized homophobia, absolutely. Like I think it's fear-based. So compounding factors are influencing it. However, don't be a fucking asshole. Like leave people alone.
Yeah.
The drag king who was doing that for their community, for our community, for pride, to be proud of themselves and who they are. And it's just so unnecessary to feel that you can have an entitlement to disrupt somebody's day in such a negative, violent way. It was very bothersome.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, it was a struggle to see that, especially because like drag has become so much more mainstream.
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay. A certain type of drag has become very mainstream. Unfortunately, king drag has not so much yet. Hopefully soon. Dragula has at least had a drag king on their show, so that's a thing. That's progress. But I mean, there's this like idea that we're safer because it's so much more well received and widely accepted, and then things like that happen, and you realize that all that safety that you feel is kind of a fallacy.
Yeah, and that's the thing I think that is really hard about these things is, and I would say, and this is my own personal opinion, but like I try not to live life in fear because fear is such a limiting emotion. And then I'm in a way I'm enacting, I'm doing what they want. If people are trying to intimidate me into being fearful of not being who I am, then in a sense I am giving them what they desire while negating an important part of who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And so I try not to live in fear. And it is scary sometimes to be queer in a world where there are people who still have such intensely angry, violent opinions about my lived existence.
Yeah.
And I would say if you have a really good gaydar, you know that I'm queer. But I think for a lot of people, I am very straight passing. And especially because of the people that I have a propensity to have romantic relationships with. It's very bizarre sometimes to be outed in particular situations and have people have really shitty reactions to it. Like I was having a conversation just recently with some people in my family, and like but I don't make it a secret like that I'm queer. If you follow me on social media, I post about it. I talk openly about it. And I had made mention of getting my new pansexual flag, and this individual in my family who shall remain nameless because I will I often post my podcast and I don't know who in my family listens, said, "Oh, but you're not."
Excuse me.
"Oh, but I'm not what? What do you mean, oh, but I'm not?" "But I am."
Yeah.
And that was just very, it was non-confrontational, really. They weren't aggressive or anything about the way they said it, but you're like, oh, well, this immediately has become a non-safe zone. I'm gonna take my ass out of here.
Yeah.
Because you've made me feel like a part of who I am very solidly is inappropriate in some capacity, or you don't believe me.
Yeah, the invalidation of it.
Befuddling, I tell you. I'm like, how would you know? Are you me? What is happening here?
Yeah. Whomever you end up in a relationship with, people assume that you are straight or gay based on who you end up with.
So I just been thinking a lot about that. Like how in some ways my labels reaffirm who my identity and who I am. And then in other capacities, I'm just like, fuck these labels. Like, oh my God, like this is so frustrating. Because in some ways I feel like because of the way that larger culture is oppressive towards my identity, I have to like be what they think I should be, like whatever that means. Like I'm still not sure, and I don't particularly care, but there are still days where I feel like I need to be more gay.
Yeah, more queer. You need to be queer. You need to be like, I don't know what that looks like, but I know what you mean.
Like I'm like, I don't know what that means. Like, does that mean I need to be more like androgynous looking or not? Because to me, I think culture, like wider culture, still thinks like, oh, if a woman is queer, then that means that she's like renders her femininity like null and void. But like, I love being feminine. My femininity is a huge part of who I am. I love makeup and dresses and wearing high heels and looking cute, and like that's part of who I am. That's part of my identity. But my gender identity and my sexual orientation are not the same thing. And so
Yeah.
gender-wise, I can look and act and be a particular way, and it shouldn't mean that my sexual orientation is somehow like rendered null and void because I don't look butch enough. Like, bad queer. And the people who are trying to tell me this are the people who have no sense or semblance of understanding.
Yeah, they're usually like cishet people.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That reaction says it all. And like when I found my labels, it really helped me out a lot. It made everything just made sense. However, if you want to call me bi, that's fine with me. If you want to call me gay, that's fine with me. You don't call me straight, and like don't assume and label me with whatever gender you think that you should label me with. But like I'm not like hard and fast with like don't you dare call me bisexual, because like a lot of people just don't seem to understand the difference between bisexuality and pansexuality, and they think that they're the same thing. So like if that's where you're coming from and you're coming from a place of love, then it doesn't bother me so much.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. And I think I mentioned last time, or in my last podcast when I was on here, that like bisexuality to me, bi means two means it's rooted in gender binary. I don't believe in a gender binary, so that's why pan to me is a better fit. But I know there have been lots of fruitful, rich discussions about how you can identify as bisexual and not believe in a gender binary, and that's fine. You know what I mean? Like, I think again, these labels, they have to make sense to the person who wants to apply them, understanding that the larger culture may not always be welcoming.
Yes.
Or understanding, which can be frustrating.
Yeah.
It's like constant tension that I just like, I don't know.
Yeah. I come from the same like linguistical aspect of it as you do, of like bi inherently means two, pan means all, therefore. And like there's nothing wrong with bisexuality if you are like genuinely bisexual and like you only are attracted to men and gender fluid people, or you are only attracted to women and men, you know, like there's a place for that. And I'm not saying that you have to be only attracted to cis men and cis women if you're going to call yourself bisexual, but to me it means that you're only attracted to two of the genders. Switch over to talk about quarantine and the reopening.
Well, in Alberta, as I affectionately call it.
Oh my God.
We have a moronic government in power with a woman who is a minister of education, who I am surprised that her amygdala tells her lungs to breathe on a daily basis, who has no plans, truly, for actually how to ensure that children are going back to school safe. And their kids. I was out in Kensington. This is going to be, folks listening, this is going to be like a rant, because we be fucking it up here in Alberta, truly. Truly. I was out yesterday in Kensington. I had to go to the bank. I had to run a few errands. So what I got on? I got my mask on, got my hand sanitizer in my backpack. I'm like in and out of places, not lingering. Like, I just needed to do my stuff. And that's life. Like, I'm not saying you can't go out. We do have to do things. And going out is good for us too. Just do it safely. So I'm like walking past one of my favorite bubble tea stores, and they had both the doors open, and I'm like, okay, there's nobody in there. I'm going to quickly run and grab a bubble tea, because I was like, ooh, bubble tea. As I'm waiting, I waited outside for my bubble tea. Again, being indoors is how you contract the virus. Standing outside limits your, greatly reduces that risk. Got my mask on. These two kids, and by kids I mean they're probably like somewhere between 13 and 15-year-old boys, walk in, no masks on. Nobody says a fucking thing. And I'm like, you know, I'm not the owner. I don't work there. It's not my place to say anything. I'm not a bylaw officer. You know, me saying to the boys, hey, boys, wear your masks. It's just going to come across as me not minding my damn business. You know, but I'm standing there thinking to myself, right, so these are the kids that are going back to school.
Yeah.
So if you can't even convince them to wear a mask when they're out and about, walking around, how the hell are you going to make them keep their masks on in schools?
Mm-hmm.
And these are older kids, right? Who should, in theory, have an understanding of why it's important. Never mind younger kids who, I think it's below grade 4, they don't have to wear masks. Or I think there's been some change, so I could be wrong. I think they do, but they can take them off when they're at their desks or something like that. But like, have you met a 6-year-old?
Yeah.
Like they literally
like why do you think that we have a cold and flu season? It's literally in and around the time where kids have been able to be around each other enough. They are little germ monsters.
They don't wash their hands, they're touching each other's eyeballs, they're sticking their hands down their pants and touching their ass and then touching things. Like they're kids. And like, don't get me wrong, kids should be able to be kids. And I do believe in some way, if we're talking about regular cold and flu season, there is a benefit to your immune system having a workout. We're not talking about regular cold and flu season. We are talking about a virus, like illness, that kills 19-year-olds without a thought.
Yeah.
That kills anybody of any age without a thought. That is painful and debilitating and awful. So get your masks on. Get your masks on, boys. Like, and that's all I was thinking about, is how are we going to send these kids back to school? And I'm a single person. I don't have any children. But, you know, my heart goes out to all those parents and the staff and the teachers.
Yeah.
Because, like, that's also extra responsibility that our government has now unloaded upon these people without giving them any more funds to deal with it. And fucking Jason Kenney, my God, this moron, says, you know, well, teachers just have to clean up after themselves because that's what they should be doing.
Okay, but the teachers wouldn't be cleaning up after themselves. The teachers would be cleaning up after themselves and however many children, and who knows where those kids are being taken on the weekends. You know, like I very seriously anticipate a very serious second wave, end of September, beginning of October.
I would not be surprised if Thanksgiving was in full-on lockdown again.
Yeah.
Like by Thanksgiving weekend. And you know, you can't be a government and have no plan.
Okay, I really want to talk about dating.
Okay.
During reopening.
Yeah, there could be judgment around that for people. But here's what I know. I have physical needs and I live alone. And this person went through rigorous screening process to be able to be allowed to be in my home. And I trust their judgment in their ability to take care of themselves. So I'm happy with that decision. Yeah, dating during COVID. You know, you would think it would make people less shitty.
People are possibly more shitty now because of COVID. So
yeah. I had a couple of interesting instances leading up to this person that I'm currently spending a lot more time with. I went on this really awkward date. Oh, so awkward. And like I can do awkward. Like I can do it. But this was like next level. Like, so the date ends. We went outside. We were sitting on a patio. And this it was a cis man. We can say it was a cis man.
Okay.
Because that's fine. Can I text you, or wanted to drive me home? I said, no, thank you. I'd like to walk. Because I was uncomfortable.
This one.
Like,
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I was uncomfortable. So I was like, no, thank you. I'm going to walk. So he goes, are you sure? And I said, yes, I will be walking. Oh, okay. But are you sure? Yes, motherfucker. That is 3 times now I've told you I'm walking. Now you're making me mad because you're not listening to me. No does not mean convince me. No means no.
Mm-hmm.
So as if the date wasn't awkward enough, that he annoyed me because he didn't listen to my no. No is a full sentence, stop, period. It is a magic word. We all should learn how to use no more. So he goes, should I text you? And I went, I was like, no. Awkward, uncomfortable moment to be like, no, thanks. I said, no, thanks. I said, I had it, this was nice. It was nice to chat with someone, be out of my home, but I'm okay. So to me, that's me indicating like, we're done here.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever. So I unmatched with him on, it was a Tinder date. Matched with him on Tinder because I thought I'd made that very clear. And I get home from my walk home, which I did feel uncomfortable the entire walk home because he'd made me feel so uncomfortable about it. Like I literally power walked to the point where to get to my house from where I was, I go like under a bridge. And then once I go under the bridge, like you can't see me, but I was so uncomfortable that he was like trying to like follow me because he wouldn't take my no for an answer.
Right.
So then I called my friend on the walk home and was like, please just talk to me because like I don't know what's going to happen, which is never a feeling a person should have.
No.
Ever.
Ever.
So I was already a little rattled. I get home and this guy had attempted to add me on Instagram, which I quickly deleted and blocked because I was like, no thank you. But then found me on Facebook and sent me a message that was just like, what the fuck is your fucking problem? If you weren't having a good time, you should have just said so. Like, all of this shit. And I was like, buddy, did I not make it clear that, like, no? And also, by the way, when I'm out on a date with someone in the middle of the date, I'm not just going to be like, yo, this isn't fun. On what fucking planet? It's not safe for me to do that. No. Even if I'm outside and surrounded by people. Mm-hmm. So, like, buddy, red flag after red flag after red flag. I'm not going on another date with you. I don't want to talk to you ever again. Mm-hmm. But those are red flags for me. You didn't listen to my no. You went behind my back and did something that I felt very strongly about. And you were just, like, awkward the entire date.
Yeah.
Like, no, that's not a good date.
And then the violent message post-date.
And then, yeah, sending me a violent message post-date. So I was fucking rattled. Anyway, those are my dating stories.
Thank you for sharing those. And then the last thing that I have added to the format of the podcast as of the last episode that I recorded, because I am just flying by the seat of my pants in this whole experience. What piece of advice would you give to young cis women, pansexual people?
Oh my gosh. Honestly, this could go to more than just that particular demographic.
Mm-hmm.
But go to therapy. Like, not because I believe that there's something inherently wrong with all of us. I don't believe it's about that. Therapy makes us better people because it makes us have to stop and take a pause and take a breath and reflect. I think we're here on this planet to grow and become better versions of ourselves. So
thank you for doing this again. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. I'm happy to be here. I love chatting with you. This is really, I don't know, this is really cool. I appreciate that I get to talk about my identity, my experiences, and just keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you for tuning into another episode of Queerantine, the podcast where we talk about all things queer and all things quarantine. I'd like to thank today's guest for joining me, and if you would like to follow me on Instagram, you can find me at generation.q. That's JENNARATION.q. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time in Queerantine.